ego or whatever it is, but I always wanted to be an artist, and I always thought of myself as an artist. I just knew that I wasn't. There were times in my life that A, I wasn't good enough, or B, I wasn't. I had nothing to give. Like, I think when I was younger and I was making work, I thought of myself as like a Jewish expressionist, and I wanted the world to know the ills and the trauma of my life, and I was going to show everybody what it felt like. And I think that there was no market for that or me, and there's a reason for it, because there's enough Michigas in the world. Like, who needs my stuff hanging on their wall, And I think it wasn't until I kind of grew up a little bit and realized that, like, oh no, my work can actually be one of like service and making people kind of happy and like giving instead of taking, and showing instead of telling, that all of a sudden I think people started to respond a little bit to what I was doing. And I think that now I'm in a place where, I'm like, okay, now I can be an artist, because I actually am in a place where I feel comfortable with what I'm saying, as opposed to before, like, whatever, I can mix color, and I still knew composition, and I knew all that stuff, but I don't know if I had a reason to be loved or to be, coveted or purchased or whatever, And so I think I still wanted to be an artist my whole life, but I'm just not sure I was worthy of it.
Yours is the road less traveled to find success in the art world in your late 40s. The model these days seems to be trying to find that rookie talent out of the MFA program. Was there any particular pushback to the fact that you were an early career artist at a later point in your life?
I think there was less of a pushback on that than there was a pushback on that I was an art dealer for so long, and that I had established so many relationships within the art world as an art dealer. I think that that was a bigger pushback. I think that, like, artists like Scott Kahn, and I think that the story of kind of the artists finding their voice or maybe getting rediscovered later in life has been a theme recently. But I think that the art dealer kind of being taken seriously as an artist is maybe a little more taboo. And that was, for me, was a harder kind of nut to crack, I would say. And still, I think it still affects me. I think that, especially in my little circles that I ran in as an art dealer, it's still harder. But I think that, that's why having done a show in Hong Kong with Levy-gorvy, like, was so kind of freeing for me. It's because, like, I knew nobody in Hong Kong as an art dealer. Like, I didn't have any collectors in Hong Kong as an art dealer. And so I kind of felt like I was going in there really raw, like, as an artist. And that actually really was freeing for me in terms of, like, making work in the studio, because I felt like there were no kind of, like, shadow voices a little bit where, when I was making the show in LA, I was like, oh boy, this person and this person and this person, all these people that knew me as an art dealer will see, this. And, so it was really nice to have that kind of freedom in Hong Kong. And I was like, oh, this is how other people must feel. Like, this is how other artists must feel, like, when they do a show. Like, they're not walking in a room full of, like, like, all this baggage.
So one of my recent guests was a person named Debbie Millman, and she's a designer, brand guru, arts podcaster, and a huge art collector. And, the majority of her collection is really heavy in text. I mean, Lawrence Weiner, Jenny Holzer, Barbara Kruger, Ed Ruscha. And, when I look at your new work, Pool Party, it seems to kind of fit with all those names. So my question for you is, tell me about the power of words and why do they feature so prominently in this new body of work?
I would say, I think the words started to come into the work as literally kind of a shortcut to communication for me. I think it really was just, how can I, because I was a little older coming to it, it was like, how much time do I got? If people are going to actually take me seriously, how much time? I don't have that much time to kind of like, you know, sing my poetry here. So it was like, how quickly can I say what I need to say? And I think that having found that voice, and the irony of it all is that I am super, super dyslexic. I have like crazy like reading issues. And so a lot of times I will do studies and stuff, and I'll take a picture of it or something and send it to my wife. She'll be like, yeah, that's not how you spell sweet, or like what, and which is amazing. And there have been times I've actually like not done that and gotten very far into painting, and then gotten to like, oh, Joel, I hate to do this, but like you spelled that word wrong. But I think it's just like this, I get to play with, like, now I've aestheticized the words, and now, now I'm playing with this text right now, actually, where it says Freudian slip, and I'm painting the honey. It's like, it looks like dripping honey, and it's like, I get to kind of like, visualize the text and see the text and like all the ways to write the letters. And I think that I just it's like I get to do so much with it, and I'm having like a blast with it. And I wouldn't even, it's almost now, it's like, I've built that language up for myself now that it's like, I wouldn't even know I wouldn't even want to make a picture without it. It's like a color to me.
So does the text always kind of match the visual, or do you use like some cognitive dissonance in there? There's conflict in the visual versus the text.
I mean, I think there's always a dialogue and an acknowledgement of it, for sure. Like, it would never be, I think, I've often thought about like, Ruscha in that way. Like, Ruscha is like a cool cowboy from Oklahoma, where like a lot of times you might very intentionally, like, you will see text that is totally disconnected with the visual. And I think that that's part of the charm of his work and why he is so great, but it's a totally different thing. And I think for me, it's not that at all. I think they're very much hand in hand. And whether it's like something of a supporting structure for it, or it is, to point out maybe it's opposite or part of the story. But it's always acknowledged, for sure. But it doesn't have to be, no rules.
It is interesting you're talking about the dyslexia, and I've listened to conversations with Richard Branson, and he talks about his dyslexia. He's somebody else that has always been identified as being a hustler. And, he talks about how his journey from, schlepping up to being a billionaire, it's almost like the dyslexia gave him an advantage because he was processing information differently. And, it's interesting because, you hear about left-handed people have better spatial intelligence because they're always having to compensate for living in a right-handed world. And so I just I just wonder, looking back, do you feel like the dyslexia actually? I'm sure your family story was part of the hustler mentality, but do you feel like the dyslexia was also part of what contributed to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all contributed to it. I think, definitely like when I was being sent in the hall like daily in 5th grade, today I would say like, this is who I am and I wouldn't trade anything, and like, this is the fabric of my, but like, if you would have asked the fifth grade self who was like feeling shamed and, like, no, I, wouldn't want to wish that upon anybody, but I think that, when one has to deal with struggles, I've often recently been thinking of, Viktor Frankl's like Man's Search for Meaning. It's like, how do we find, meaning in literally in a place of, where there is no conceivable meaning, like, I think that, once we are set up for challenges and can prevail, God, life is beautiful. But I think at the moment or the time, it's not something you'd wish upon anybody, especially your young self. But yeah, I mean, I think all those challenges contributed to how I see things, and I love how I see things now. But again, I think if you would ask my younger self some of these questions at the time, I'd be like, fuck no, like, let me be normal. Like, I hate this,
Right.
Like, yeah, I want to be just like Charlie, who can read a book.
Right. So what's on the horizon for you? I mean, do you think your work's going to continue to get bigger? Are words going to continue to play a bigger part? Where do you feel like your body of work is headed?
Yeah, I definitely, text, just knowing, what I'm working on now, definitely like text is integral to it. I am going to be doing an exhibition at the Long Museum this summer in Shanghai, and I am doing a series, a new body of work for that show, which is all, heavily text-based, and I'm kind of using I'm using camouflage and to kind of like camouflage and work, the text and the image, like kind of like where is the foreground and where's the background, and what is the subject matter, and so I'm super like into what these paintings are, and so one day at a time, and kind of doing these, and future, who the fuck knows,
Right. And so, but right now people can see your work at levy-gorvy in London and Palm Beach, I think through the middle of March.
Yeah.
So if folks wanted to keep track of you and your work, where would they go? I mean, is there Instagram or
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty like obsessed with Instagram. I love Instagram. I tend to like, Instagram my children quite a bit, and like weird, situations I create in the studio, and pretty much like there. And I show with David Cordancy in LA, and I show with levy-gorvy, and yeah, I pretty much like, I'm on Instagram all the time, and I'm doing the show at Long Museum in July, and I don't know, I'm around.
Right on. Well, Joel,
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. That's all the time we have for this week. You've been listening to Art Sense. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe, and while you're there, please rate the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback is the key to other folks finding us. If you'd like to see images related to the conversation, read a transcript, and find other bonus features, you can go to cambia.art and click on the podcast tab. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can email me at craig@cambia.art. Thanks for listening.